Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Second Act Actors. I'm your host, Dr. Janet McMorty, and I'm still a medical doctor simultaneously trying to pursue a career in acting. One housekeeping thing before we get going on this week's episode. I would like to let you know that within a couple weeks, all of my episodes will have sponsors attached to them. Don't freak out, okay? Don't freak out. These people have reached out to me saying they would be interested in having me say a few words about themselves and or their business in exchange for sponsorship of my podcast. I'm very enthusiastic about these sponsors because every single one of them I have used personally myself, used their business, used their personal services, what have you, to further my acting career, further my life, get my headspace into better space. So they've been vetted. And I'm also very enthusiastic about this because, as we all know, putting this podcast into the world has been a wonderful passion project of mine, but it is not free and it is not inexpensive. So I'm very appreciative of these people reaching out to me and wanting to sponsor the podcast. Also, big thing, again, like I said, I've vetted all these people, I've used all their services, and I want to share them with you all. They are all wonderful, incredible actor supporters, and I'm very excited about it. But again, don't freak out. I know it's a bit of a change, but again, these are all wonderful people and very, very, very much appreciate their support. If you're interested in being a sponsor, shoot me an email, secondactactors@gmail.com, and we will have a discussion to see if it is right for you. My guest this week is Kurt Evans. Now, this is kind of a hybrid industry episode, but also actor episode, because Kurt Evans is a Vancouver-based actor as well as an acting teacher and instructor at the Vancouver Film School. The reason why this is kind of an industry episode is because he is the founder of Artist to Artist Showcase. Now, in Canada, it's a bit different than the United States. We don't have many opportunities to interact, get feedback, and perform in front of casting directors. I know in the States, this is a huge thing. There's casting director workshops all the time. In Canada, we don't have that often. So the Artist to Artist Showcase is one of the few opportunities for Canadian actors to put their work out into the world and be seen by Canadian casting directors. And Kurt Evans is the founder of this wonderful, wonderful platform, which I have used and found I had an incredibly positive experience with the Artist to Artist Showcase. If you're interested in this showcase, there is a link below, and they'll be having a showcase starting up very soon, within the next month or so. I'll let you know when that occurs. Kurt Evans has a phenomenal story about basically being an actor his entire life, acting and now instructing as well too, the massive amounts of imposter syndrome that comes with that, but also he has incredible experience and literal empathy for second act actors because he coaches a lot of them, he instructs a lot of them at the Vancouver Film School, and the idea of going from the feedback you get in an audition room, and now that lack of it, and he uses the word sterility, which I love, the sterility of a self-tape. This is an incredible, incredible episode. Please enjoy Kurt Evans. Story. How did you get into acting?
All right. So I started acting when I was in high school, taking the standard acting classes that high schools offer, and had a really good drama teacher, and more importantly, actually, I had a really good English teacher that saw me. One of the class projects was, you had to read a poem in front of the class. So I was actually reading poetry at the time. I was just that kind of a teenage boy, I guess. And I loved Edgar Allan Poe, and I loved the poem Dream Within a Dream. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to read this. And I always liked, performing, kind of, it was always something I enjoyed. And when I stood in front of the class, I was crazy nervous. And because it was a poem and I wasn't sure how it was going to go over, but I decided just to lean into it and go for it. And I remember the silence after I finished. And then people like actually applauded, which was weird. And then I had the teacher approach me after class and say, I want to work with you. I want to do something with you. I'm really interested in directing you in a drama. So she ended up creating a play that was like kind of just for her. She made a deal with the principal, and I got to play Cyrano de Bergerac when I was 17. And it was a really transformative experience. It was a big task, and she trusted me with it. Not only with it, but also with editing it. We had to edit the play down because it's a very long play. So we sat together in a room for hours on end, going through each and every line and actually editing it together. So right away, I was in the headspace of kind of collaborating and co-creating and building something together. And that feeling of collaboration and of creation has stuck with me my entire life. And that's really what I love. I love that connection. So connection on the creation end, and then connection on the presentation end. So standing in front of a theater full of parents and students and, you know, acting my heart out as my 17-year-old self playing a 40-year-old man with a big nose. And there were people crying. There were people weeping in the audience, and I could hear it. I was on stage dying, and I remember hearing and feeling the audience. And I knew from that moment on that this was something I had never felt before, and I wanted to feel it again. It wasn't a sense of like triumph. It was a sense of unity. It was a sense of community. It was a sense of connection, and I loved it, and I needed it, and I moved towards it every chance I got. So high school, you know, that was, we did some other stuff, and I got to play in a Shakespeare play and all that. And it was great fun. And then my mom clipped out this little newspaper article saying, looking for actors for a murder mystery, improvised murder mystery. And my mom, who's like the sweetest woman in the world, she clips it out of the newspaper. She's like, Kurt, you know, you really like that acting thing. You know, maybe you should phone. And I was like, oh, I don't know. Anyway, I phoned the number. That phone number eventually became my phone number because I ended up marrying the woman who was directing that show. So it was quite a journey from that stage to, you know, our marriage, of course. But I can't remember how many shows we did. I think we probably did 40 shows together in that time span. We did improvised murder mysteries. We did straight up plays. We did lunchbox theater. We did fringe shows. We traveled with the Fringe. I went to all over the place doing all sorts of shows, and it was so much fun. And I met amazing people who were so much better than I was that I got to learn just a ton from being on stage with them. And learning what it was all about to be an actor and make no money. Because really that's the reality of a stage actor, especially an independent stage actor. You're not in it for the money. You're in it for the experience and for the joy of it and for that connection. So that's how I got started. And that was actually all in Winnipeg, Manitoba, where I'm from. And so I knew that I probably couldn't make a living as an actor in Winnipeg unless I got extremely lucky and was well liked by all the artistic directors because it was going to be theater mostly. I kind of wanted to figure out if I could do acting for television. And there was one TV show being shot in Winnipeg. I had no experience on camera, zero. I went to the audition, completely terrified, knowing not what to expect at this, except I had two scenes that I had to do. And it said, you should bring in a song that you can whistle. And it has to be copyright free. So I was like, okay, well, luckily I can do a pretty good Disney whistle. So I decided to do that, and I walk in the room, didn't know what I was doing. The casting director, I can't even remember who actually was casting director. It was for a show called The Adventures of Shirley Holmes, who is the great granddaughter of Sherlock Holmes, and she finds the little investigation kit in the attic, and she decides to start investigating things around her small town, which was Winnipeg. I think it lasted a couple seasons, but anyway, this was a guest star role. I booked it, my first audition, and like just a crazy, amazing experience. I remember talking to the producer at one point, saying, like, really excited, 18-year-old me, this is my first job on set, and she says, "Oh yeah, well, maybe it won't be your last." Like, I don't know if that's encouragement or if that's like, I don't know what that is. I don't know how to take that. But it was a great experience. It was super fun, and it got me hooked on TV. So I looked west, and obviously Vancouver was kind of a hotbed for stuff at the time. X-Files was being shot out here, and I really liked X-Files, and I thought, hey, maybe I can get on that show if I get out there quick. So I finished my university degree, which was in education. 4-year degree right after high school, and all throughout that I was performing on stage in Winnipeg, pretty much unrelated to university, and then moved out here and got an agent and started the process. It was it's been an interesting road since then, but yeah, for the last 25 years I've been here.
Did you have any formal theater training?
Formal theater training outside of the university education department that I was part of. Yeah, that would probably be it. It was I double majored in English and drama. So I was taking all of the classes that a formal theater student would be taking, except for the production classes. So I wasn't in those production classes, but we did mime, we did improv, we did voice, we did movement, we did all sorts of stuff. And of course, scene study. And all of the production stuff, it was really not that big of a deal for me not to be a part of, because I was already doing so much. I was in countless plays throughout the year. So it didn't feel like a big loss for me. And plus, then at the end of it, I was going to have a Bachelor of Education degree that my mom thought was a good idea to have just to fall back on. So, moms, right? And that's kind of how it all began. Yeah.
And so you get to Vancouver and begin to build. What has that been like over the last couple decades? Has it been kind of a steady climb for you, or what has the career been like?
Yeah. So it's always been up and down. Acting is a roller coaster. You have peaks, you have valleys. If you get lucky, you can get into a groove, which can lead you to another gig and another gig and another gig. And those have happened for me, and those have been fantastic. And then there have been droughts. There have been months that I haven't booked anything, haven't worked at all. And so I realized pretty quickly that I had to have something going on besides just acting. And I did a number of different jobs when I first started out. I mean, I did the classic, waiting tables. I also started to look into doing some subbing for teaching, because I had my Bachelor of Education degree. And subbing is on call, so you can say no if you have to, and da-da-da-da-da. I didn't actually end up doing that because on set, I ended up meeting with a guy who was running a theater school in Vancouver, Bill Marchant, who was the head of department for Vancouver Film School acting department back in, when would this have been? Probably 2005, somewhere around there. I think I met Bill earlier than that, though. I think I met Bill in 1999, and he said, "Hey, why don't you come and sub some classes and stuff?" So I started doing that, and I found that to be fantastic for a number of reasons. Not the least of which is that it fed me as an actor. It really did feed me. I got to be a better actor because I was a teacher, and that was such an unexpected gift. So I still do that. I still teach on the side. I teach probably about 4 or 5 classes per week at Vancouver Film School right now. I teach audition technique. I teach acting for the camera. And I teach a class called Performance Studies, where we watch movies and talk about performances that we see. So I've been doing that for the last 17 years, the exact age of my daughter. Because, it's nice to be able to pay rent and feed your child on a consistent basis, in a guaranteed kind of way. It also really takes the pressure off of booking the job when you go in the room, or when we used to go in the room, because that doesn't happen anymore. So look, there have been a lot of changes over the years, but to answer your specific question, it's a roller coaster. It's up and down. You need to have something on the side. And so, yeah, I've built those different things for myself to be able to sustain the life that I love, and that feeling that I talked about at the very beginning about connecting and that communion of this art. I think it's really special and unique, and it's something that not everyone gets to experience, but everyone has experienced it at least as an audience member. And it feels just as great as a performer, if not better.
I think that's a big reason why there are so many of, as I've now dubbed, second act actors, right? Like people who have had a career in whatever way, shape, or form, or life in whatever way, shape, or form, and are now changing into a more creative, performative career because, like you were saying, it's always been there. And if you've kind of experienced a little bit of that at some point in your life and liked it, it's addicting. But it's also a lovely community that I know is missing. And I know for a fact it's missing from the vast majority of like corporate jobs and stuff like that out there. And that's why I think there's such a hole that people have if they don't have something like that.
I end up teaching a lot of these people as they come through Vancouver Film School. Mm-hmm. There's quite a few people who come through the program who want to try it out. And so they decide to take a year off of their career and commit to a film school. And, we put them through the paces. And by the end of it, they have a really clear idea whether or not this is something that they want to pursue. Typically they do in some way. And hopefully we give them the tools to be able to help pursue it. But and the thing that I hear from them is that exactly that story, them looking down the barrel of another 20 years of this, right? Or whatever it might be. And wondering, what am I missing? What do I need? What do I want? What really feeds me besides having a good paycheck and security, family, and all that stuff? What else do I need here in this world, in this life? Mm-hmm. And they, a lot of times we've got some experience as an actor, whether it's, in high school, or I think it actually all goes all the way back to play when we were kids, that sense of like the game that we're going to play with our Barbies or our action figures or our cars or whatever it might be. And the commitment to that play and the joy of that play and the communion of that play, like, okay, you get to be this person and I get to be, and we're going to do this and you're going to, and that is a part of theater. It's private theater, but it's theater. And it's that same kind of sense of wonder and of commitment and connection that you get when you're on stage. And so I think we all have an intrinsic connection to it. Somewhere in our soul, we know what this is and it pulls to us, and we all want to be kids again at some level, right? We all want to have that sense of play, and we felt it once, and where is it? And can I reach it? And if you can let go, if you can commit to being in the moment and getting out of your head, your adult head, you've got a good shot at really finding that joy of your 6-year-old self. And yeah, so I'm still 6, hopefully.
Hopefully, right. Yeah. And so, I think you have such a unique perspective coming at this from not just an actor, but as a teacher, but also a teacher of actors, right? Yeah. Like it's such a great blend of being able to not just observe other actors around you and teach them, but also like as an actor yourself, being able to like literally empathize with your students and the community. it's pretty, I think, a pretty special thing to be doing.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And like I said, I do get a lot out of it. Especially when I first started out, immediately when you start teaching, I think when you start any career or any job that has authority, you have an imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So even though I had so much experience and so much education when I started teaching, you feel this weight of responsibility of being the person who has the knowledge. And I had to learn how to relax that and empathize and connect with my students and realize that a lot of it for me as a teacher is performance. This is a play that I've done now hundreds of times, this lesson plan, and so getting up in front of the class feels kind of like that. It feels a bit like, here we go. All right, you're my audience. Awesome. I'm here to not just entertain you, though. I need to pull you along this journey. And I find that that's a really interesting experience as well. Like watching the journey of a student from day one, because I see them day one and I work with them on day one of the program, and very close to their very last day is with me again. So I get to really see the arc of that journey and go on that journey with them every single time. So it's always fascinating. And each student has a different perspective and a different kind of angle of approach and different strengths, different weaknesses, different loves, different joys. And it's a great journey to be part of. So I get to watch, all of those stories unfold.
Do you notice any differences? And I don't mean to say like one is good and one is bad, but just like, do you notice any just differences in the actors who are, say, fresh out of high school and now they're coming into theater school, or compared to people like, say, myself or other second act actors who are coming into this after a different career as a teacher, but also if you've ever had experience, say, in the theater or on set with someone who, has never been to, say, a classical theater school?
Yeah. Well, okay. So there's huge differences between those people, because the people that are coming in as second act actors are usually more mature than the average 19, 20 to 23-year-old, which is kind of the average age of a student at VFS is between 18 and 25. But I've taught many 30-year-olds, many 40-year-olds, some 50-year-olds even coming through. And they come in with a lot of different life experiences as well. Like when I ask a 20-year-old to be in a scene with that is about a relationship that has gone on for 5 years with someone, they have usually no experience with something like that. All and everything that goes along with that, right? So a lot of it is life experience, being able to bring all of your life experience. So in a lot of ways, the second act actors or the slightly older actors are at an advantage because they have all of that life experience to be able to bring to whatever part that they're creating. And younger actors, what you often see them doing is emulating older actors or things that they've seen, right? Modes of play and modes of performance that they've witnessed. So they can access it that way. They can access it in their imagination. And if they commit enough and if they dig enough into the details of what it is that they're doing, they can get to that level to almost mimic the life experience that someone else might actually have. But that's a big one. And you've got all sorts of reasons why people go to theater school when they're 19, 20. And a lot of those priorities are very different than someone who's going to the school at 30 or 40. So, you see those differences clearly as well.
I've said this many times on this show to many people, and I'll probably keep saying it forever. If I had gone into theater school at age 18, 19, I don't think I'd still be acting now at almost 40, just because I think because again, like you were saying, and everyone's unique, obviously, but my priorities at that time would not have aligned with now what I see need to be the priorities of somebody who's acting and enjoying and for the love of it. And also I was an idiot, like I didn't know anything about myself, as I think most people are, as you should be. You're supposed to be an idiot.
Absolutely.
Right? So,
hey, your 20s are all about learning about yourself.
Absolutely. And just making, bad decisions and then learning from it, whether or not you do. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I think there's I like the maturity piece, of course. The financial stability is a huge thing. I think nobody likes to talk about, but you mentioned at the very beginning, as soon as you have a bit of that, it takes the pressure off, and it doesn't put the pressure on your art to be the financial, right? You're not depending on it. It doesn't owe you money, kind of thing.
Yeah. You don't have to book this gig.
You don't have to. The desperation isn't there. But yeah, for sure. Do you have any advice for anyone who's thinking about maybe starting film school, taking a sabbatical to go to film school, or just craving a change?
Well, take a chance. You don't have to go to film school. There are a lot of great classes out there that you could take. I would recommend taking some classes before you introduce yourself to the industry. I think one of the biggest mistakes actors make is taking that first step before they feel like they're ready, and putting themselves out there before they're on the same level as all of the other actors out there trying to make a stab at it. So, prepare yourself properly. You want to, especially in this day and age, there's quite a lot of technical elements that you kind of got to get your handle on. Doing self-tapes is critical. So you've got to get that. You've got to get that space. You've got to get that tripod, get the, know how to work your phone to be your camera, and where to put your reader, and all the stuff that comes around. So there's a number of things like that. But I think, my biggest piece of advice is to not quit your day job, not stop that other stream of income, whatever it might be. If you're gonna take time off, if you save money and you're gonna take time off to take classes in a dedicated way, awesome. More power to you that you can actually afford to do that, because it's costly, especially as an adult, to be able to take a year off and spend whatever it is to go to a theater school. So have all those kind of ducks in the row, and go in with a sense of play, a sense of fun, a sense of adventure, and reconnect always with that feeling that got you to that first step. Know what that is. Write it down. Explore it. And always try to be moving towards it. It's very, very easy to get discouraged. It's very easy to lose sight of the thing that got you to this place. So, and there's going to be disappointment, as soon as you graduate, or as soon as you start actually submitting to casting directors, the ratio of auditions that you're doing compared to the number of jobs that you're actually going to book is even larger now than it used to be 2 years ago, because of self-tapes. I mean, there has been a massive shift in the last 2 years because of COVID. The industry was dabbling in self-tapes prior to this. Now it is the standard. It is the norm, and it is not going away. So you need to first get good at self-tapes. And you have to get comfortable with not performing live, not walking into a room and giving it. That's something I miss in the self-tape world right now. That idea of standing outside a casting office. Kurt, you're on deck. Gotcha. I know what that process is for me. I've got 10 minutes to really get into that moment of just before I walk on stage. Casting door opens. Okay, Kurt, come on in. We're ready for you. I come in. I know exactly what this moment is. There's my audience. Greet the audience. I know all the rhythms of this thing, and I'm prepared to share whatever I've created with the room. All of that is gone. So I've got the self-tape that I have to somehow bring that spirit into that space, whatever space I create. And also remember that a perfect performance is never the performance that you want to submit. The best performances are performances that have a little bit of things that you didn't plan, you know? So I learned pretty early on as an actor that the ratio of the plan compared to the stuff I've never actually experienced was about 80% to 20%. So 80% of this audition should be something that I've prepared, something that I've really mapped out and made specific choices on. But 20% of this has to be something new, has to be something that I've never actually felt before in this take. Every take has to have that 20%. So where am I going to find, how am I going to find that 20%? And a lot of actor training is about learning how to connect to that 20%. It's about learning how to connect to the other person that you're reading with and the moment of inspiration between you and that person and the events that are depicted in the scene. So finding a way to lose yourself in that 20% and still hold on to the 80 plan is the real trick of acting. And, you know, whatever mathematical ratio you want to give it, there's always got to be that element of surprise and that element of chaos and that element of like, I'm not quite sure where I am, but this is exciting, because if it's exciting for you, it'll be exciting for the audience. So finding a way to do that by yourself is way more challenging than it was in the room, because in the room, I had all this different energy that I had to contend with. I had the energy of the nervous casting director. Is Kirk going to mess this up? Is he going to embarrass me for bringing him into this? You know, okay, I've got that. I've got the director. Could this be the person that I wanted for my role? You know, I've got the camera operator. Oh my God, when's lunch? I've got the reader who usually wants to be an actor. So they're like, do you need anything? Are you ready? Can I get you? You know, are you okay? Okay. Whenever you are, you know, I'm going to do, you know, so you've got all these variables of audience members who are bombarding your presence with their energy. And that 20% was naturally inclined to lean into blending with all of those energies, right? With playing with that stuff. But in a self-tape session, it's sterilized. Right? It's well known. There are no surprises, right? It's a room that you've built with a camera. So I encourage people to find ways to build surprises for themselves. I encourage people to, you know, when they do a self-tape, to get it in 1 or 2 takes. Do not give yourself the freedom to do infinite takes. While you record is not the moment that you want to be rehearsing and practicing this. So be disciplined before you start self-taping and get completely off book and ready to perform. And what that means for me is making sure that I've stood up with the material. I've actually embodied the thing. I know I've imagined where the camera will be. I have imagined where the reader will be as I'm rehearsing and as I'm plotting out all my eye lines and all the world that I'm going to build here. And I completely live in it 100%. I have to be in that place of absolute connection and freedom, looking for that 80-20, even by myself in rehearsal. And when I get to that place of being ready for that moment and being ready to let in that some of that stuff that I haven't planned, then I know I'm ready to actually record the self-tape. So that's been the challenge and my process for the last 2 years.
That is so helpful, because I think that's such great tangible advice to avoid. I like the term that what did you say, sterile or whatever? I love that because, well, my doctor self loves that word. Like it's curated, right? Because you have the time to curate perfection. And I think that's a really good thing to hear, even though we hear it all the time, but just to hear it again about how it's okay to be imperfect. Because so much of, I know myself personally, wants to control as many variables as possible. Because so much of the industry is out of our control. So what I can control is the perfect self-tape that I send over. which is, as I'm learning being in this for 2 years now, not what I should be doing, because that's this curated, whatever, successful experiment. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a difficult balance, because your intellectual self wants to have that perfection. It really, and that amount of power and control is nice to have in an industry where you don't often have it. So I completely get it. But as an actor and as a director and as a teacher, I see that mistake made a lot. And you get good performance. You can get good performance. You can get like a decent kind of run of a scene. You can, you can get a passing grade. You can get even in the, 90s maybe. But will you inspire? Probably not. That will be much more difficult if you just stick to plan, if you just stay in intellect. You've got to be engaged in the chaotic mess of the moment. And yeah, it is something we hear all the time. How do you do it? That's the question. How do you nurture it? How do you actually start making the chance of that happening better for yourself, which is, I think, the most important question as an actor I'm still trying to answer and find. And that journey is interesting. So that's something that still draws me into the idea of self-taping 3 times a week, 4 times a week, however many times a week it is.
What made me think about what you were just saying there is, like, how do you nurture it? But also, how do we know that we're doing it well? No, well is not the right word, but like, how do we know that we're actually doing that? Like, is it coming across on the screen? Like, because we get no feedback from the self-tapes we send off into the void.
I know.
If you're lucky, you have an agent who watches your tapes and is saying like, good. But most of the time I'm hearing from people, they're like, I'm gonna send it away, and who knows, it felt like it was good and I didn't hear anything.
Yeah. So this is the second biggest problem that's occurring right now. And the other thing that I really miss about auditions, is that even if the casting director said nothing to me, I would still get feedback. There was still an energy exchange, I could see in their face. I could see in their eyes. I could feel the camera guy go, oh, pretty good. I could see the reader in tears. I could see, like, there were things that were being communicated in that moment of performance that are impossible to communicate with a self-tape. So you feel isolated. You feel, like you're completely outside of the experience of the performance. And when you send it away, yeah, it's usually crickets. The only time that I get feedback on anything, besides my agent going, oh, that was really nice, and that's, what else is your agent going to say? Except for, that sucks and I don't want you on my roster anymore.
Do it again.
Yeah. I've never actually gotten that, so I'm happy. I have heard of that happening. But the, you're kind of left in the dark in terms of, it's like, doing your best work and you like going, oh, that was so great. And afterwards you're like, yes, I totally felt that. And then, you listen and it's just silence in the theater. And you have to kind of maybe think that maybe someone out there will hear this. So it's a really difficult place that we're in right now. And I think, we're trying to figure out how to properly address it. We're talking to, the union, and we're talking to casting directors, and we're trying to communicate what this feels like right now as an actor. But the weird thing for me is that I know what it was like. I know what it was like to walk into a casting office, to meet those directors, those casting directors, those readers, all those people, to have that community. And so as a young actor, or as an emerging actor, or as a second act actor coming into the industry, in the last 2 years, the thought of not ever meeting a casting director makes no sense to me. Like, it's so outside of my experience as a blue collar working actor. Like, my job was auditioning. That was my job, right? I would go on, I would do my job maybe 3 or 4 times a week. and I would experience that job, and that job has shifted tremendously now. So I mean, I can't tell you the number of lessons that I learned from working with casting directors, good and bad. But those experiences were invaluable to me, becoming the actor that I was when I was in my 20s. Without any kind of, direction or any kind of feedback or any kind of redirect, any kind of conversation, energy exchange, none of it. It's daunting. There's one casting directing office in Toronto, the Forest Sisters, that are still doing Zoom live auditions. And some commercial casting directors, or most commercial casting directors, are doing still in-person live auditions, which is great. And I would like to see more. I think the only time we're ever going to be live is probably going to be over Zoom, and it'll probably be a callback. And then if they do a chemistry read, they might bring you into a room together. They might have some kind of system for that. But right now it's very isolating. So, which is a lot of reason why I chose to create Artist to Artist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was my kind of hope for a segue there, being like, how do we get feedback? My agent told me about this thing where you can get feedback.
Did your agent tell you about it?
Oh yeah,
cool.
She sends us anytime there's a showcase, she's like, guys, hey, hello.
Hey.
Yeah, this is really, really awesome.
Well, I'm glad is it a she? I don't know who your agent is.
Yeah, Ritter Talent Agency in Toronto. Yeah.
I'm thankful that they send it off. I do send off the information to all the agents, and I hope that it gets passed around because, look, I created Artist to Artist because as a teacher, I would see just so many students go through the program and me saying to them, I think you've got a place here. I think you can do this, and it's, I don't necessarily say that to every single person that goes through the program, but it was so heartbreaking to see the ones that I had said it to and the ones that I really believed in and who believed in themselves be crushed by an industry that was so difficult to get into because there are so many people wanting to get in. You've got gatekeepers, right? You've got agents, you've got casting directors, you've got directors. And so finding a way through those paths is difficult. And when I started, there were things called go-sees or pre-screens where you would go in and meet a casting director one-on-one, no camera operator, no reader, nothing. The casting director was usually the reader, and it was just a conversation. And then, maybe we'll read a scene. And I got to meet, I think, 3 of the casting directors in Vancouver that way. But I mean, I still remember my very first. So X-Files was the dream, right? It was like, hey, let's get on X-Files. So here I am going in to see a casting director who casts X-Files, Corinne Mayers. And I'm like, okay, this is nerve-wracking. I am terrified. I've got 3 scenes, and it's for a show called Millennium. And I was playing a deputy cop. And 3 lines separated by 3 scenes. It was like, we spot the van on I-95, and we've got him under arrest. And I don't know where he is, or something like that. Like just like 3 very different lines and scattered throughout 3 different scenes. And I remember going in and just being terrified. And I did. She's like, nice to meet you. Where are you from? Blah blah blah. Did the conversation, and I think I was like 24 at this time. 24, 25. And she's like, great, let's do the scene. I did the scene. She's like, fantastic. Can you come back at 2:00 and audition for the director and the producer? I'm like, for this episode, for this. She's like, yeah. I'm like, yes. It was like 10 a.m. So I go off and I sit for 4 hours getting bored after the first 30 minutes. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to work this. I'm just going to rehearse it. So I start rehearsing it, found a little corner in a garden nearby the studio. And I started running it over and over and over again. And in the middle of rehearsing, I'm like, this is different. There's something else here. And let me play with that. And I tried playing with it and I was like, oh, this is fun. I think I'm going to go in. I'm going to do this instead. So I go in the room, and there's the director and the producer. And this was a big lesson. There's a bunch of big lessons here, but one of the big lessons was I have to be excited about what I'm doing in the room. I have to be excited and interested about the creation that I'm about to share. If I'm not, it's dead. It's going to be dead. So I was doing that, although I didn't intellectually understand what I had done. So I wasn't nervous about meeting them because I had something to show them. And I actually had something to show the casting director as well. So
cool.
I did my audition, and I distinctly remember the look on Corinne's face, because it was like, she didn't say a word. She just looked at me. She went, "You not only did what you did this morning, but you did it better." And that bought me, I got that role, which was amazing. That was like my second audition in Vancouver. And I had many, many opportunities with that casting office throughout the years. But so those meetings, those pre-screens, that little thing that I had with Corinne where she got to see what I could do and maybe bring me in for the session later that afternoon. What a great way to meet people, right? Spend the morning where you meet new people, and in the afternoon you run the audition for it. Well, that doesn't happen anymore at all. I mean, it's so very rare. So I was seeing all these people go through the program that I loved. I loved their work. I loved their spirit. I loved the contribution that they can make to the community as an actor. And I see them quitting after 2 years, after 3 years of not booking, not meeting even all the casting directors in the city. You know, maybe one or two knows who you are. That's not enough. This is a numbers game. You've got to have everybody. You've got to make sure that you're known by everyone. They got to understand a little bit of what you can give, because there are so few parts that, you know, you would be just perfect for, that they're going to miss you for if they don't have you on their radar. So how do you get on the radar? Well, you rely on your agent to push you in to those casting offices, right? Now, so that's pre-COVID, right? So that's 2019. I was like, this is not like the system that we have, even when people went into the casting office, wasn't quite working for emerging actors. So how do I build something that is going to introduce emerging actors to casting directors the way that it used to work? And so I built Artist to Artist, which is a actor showcase platform where an actor will submit a 2-minute scene. That 2-minute scene will be looked at by at least 2 industry professionals. These people are working actors, or they're working actors and teachers like myself. And they've got good hearts, and they want to, you know, encourage and nourish and give some reality to what they're watching in terms of giving feedback. So they will write out a feedback for your performance, for your 2-minute scene. So you'll get 2 of those, and they also tick some boxes and give you a numeric score. The idea of a numeric score for acting is like, it's hard, but I had to do it because what I needed to do was I needed to create a top 10, so that the top 10 could then get the chance to actually meet the casting director and actually have a one-on-one audition or conversation or whatever it was that the casting director wanted to do, because each one wants something a little bit slightly different to be involved. So, you know, the casting directors are donating their time because this is part of their job, right? To meet people in the industry, and supporting the initiative of nurturing emerging actors is something that people should want to get behind, because it's really the soul of our industry. I mean, if we lose the ability to bring in talent, then productions that come up here are going to find a wasteland, you know, of actors who, you know, have never worked. So we want to encourage people to be in this industry and to know that there's something out there besides crickets when you send in a self-tape, you know, some kind of encouragement to say, you're on the right track, keep going, you will find a place. I mean, there are actors out there that wait decades before their break. You know, I'm still waiting for mine. I've had a lot of good luck and some great experience in the industry, and it was a lot to do with those connections that I made with casting. So I wanted to help find a way to encourage those connections. So I thought, okay, well, here's a curated list of 10 actors that you haven't met yet that are desperate to meet you in this city right now. Here you go. And I can guarantee that there are always at least 10 people in the city that need to see this casting director that haven't. because I was one of them. There are casting directors in Vancouver that didn't see me for 20 years. And why? Well, it's because maybe my agent's relationship with them wasn't as good as my agent's relationship with the other casting directors. So they just didn't trust my agent as much, right? And if you're a starting actor, you're going to go with an agent that maybe doesn't have those relationships as strongly as someone who might. So it becomes doubly difficult for you as a starting emerging actor. So there's a lot of hiccups along the way, a lot of roadblocks. And I thought, I'm just going to try to build a platform that is not financially burdensome to an actor, that can, even if they don't get in the top 10, they're going to get some feedback on their work from professional actors and teachers. And they're going to be able to get a sense of where they sit in the realm of that bar, that professional level acting bar. And then, of course, there's other things that come along with it. If you don't have an agent, you can get submitted to every agency in the city. If you make it into the top 20 of people looking for agents, we do free workshops all the time, all that stuff. So, yeah, that's what we've been doing since 2019. And we've had probably about 12 or 13 showcases, and we're just about to start one now, although this episode of this show won't air until after it's completed. But we will be having regular showcases throughout the year. So go to artist2 artist.ca to learn more.
I will link it in the show notes below.
There you go. I'll send you a poster. I'll send you, we've got a little 1-minute video introduction on our YouTube channel. So check that out. There's all sorts of ways to kind of get informed, but the best way is to really head to the website and just take a look. There's, I think actually another a resource on that website that is often, I don't know if it's being used as much as it really should be, but there's a record of the top 10 from the last 10 showcases, I think. And so you can see all of the self-tape auditions that people have put together that got them into the top 10. What a great way to study the right things to do, the right lighting, the right camera, the right stories to tell, all that stuff, the right connection, the right preparation, the right authenticity, how to find it. That's your journey. But there's an example of work that got someone into that room and got to meet a casting director and have that connection bridged.
I think it's really hard, I think, especially in Canada, like you were saying, obviously, to make these connections with casting directors, because not only are we virtual and not in the room anymore, but up here in Canada, at least, I know I do have a lot of listeners from the States, but in the States, there is quite a big catalog of casting director workshops you can take. That's like part of their acting training almost, where here in Canada, I think it's also probably a huge business, money making. Here in Canada, we don't really have that. It's not like, oh, I'm going to go to such and such and such workshop. Probably also because there aren't that many casting directors in Canada as well too, where in the States, it's just like kaboom. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that? I know you've probably heard of all the workshops in the States and stuff.
Look, casting director workshops can be good. There are casting directors out there with really big hearts and with the right mentality of it, right? There are casting directors that do workshops that end up donating all the money. Like they might charge whatever it is, but that's usually shared by the studio that is actually hosting that casting director workshop. So I've been to a bunch of casting director workshops, especially when I first started out, because I wanted to know what it was like. And there are some in Vancouver that still do them occasionally. I think Candice Alzinga actually does a few, and she, I know, donates, I think, all of the money that she gets from them. As we also donate a portion of our each submission to the Actor Fund of Canada. So, I'm not in it to make a million here. I'm really, and most casting directors want to share that information that they have in some way without taking advantage of the dream. There are some bad apples though. And I think back in 2015, maybe 2010, there were casting director workshops in the United States where if you didn't take the casting director workshop, you would not get an audition for the show that they were casting for. So if you did not pay them $500, $250, whatever it was for that workshop, then they would not see you for that show because they didn't know you. And so the Casting Society of America really put a foot down on that, and that said, absolutely, this is not something that we endorse. This is not something that is going to be allowed. And so productions got on board with that. And so many productions now forbid casting directors from doing any kind of workshop, especially in Canada. Like, then the Canadian casting directors have been really great about this. It was rarely taken advantage of in Canada. Like, rarely were there casting directors working in Canada that were hosting these, and they were exploitative, right? You had some casting directors coming up from the States that I found kind of odd. Like, why do I really want to meet this casting director from the United States when they will never cast me? They can't cast me. Like, I mean, okay, so I get some information about them and I'll be able to learn some insights about the US market and what their brain works like and what they see in actors and all that stuff. But there's better places to learn that. And so spending that money is incredibly burdensome for an American actor, I would imagine. I to think that you've got to spend $500 to meet a casting director or just to get on their radar is abhorrent. It really shouldn't be the way that things are run. And if I had my way, artist to artist would be free, and I wouldn't have to charge anything. As it is, I charge as little or as little as I possibly can. It's basically like the amount of a coaching session for an hour, right? So between $55 and $65 for to submit a scene for the showcase, and hopefully you get enough stuff with that to equate that to being valuable. And so it's really hard for a starting actor to kind of navigate that minefield of workshops. I ended up getting taken advantage of when I started out. I came out here. I had one contact in an agency that wasn't really an agency, and I was told that I would be perfect for a weekend workshop with an actor coming up from LA. And usually the actors had to audition to get into this workshop, but they weren't going to make me audition because, family friend and all. And it was only $500. And I had come to Vancouver. I think I had $4,000 on my account when I came. I was like, I built up a little nest egg to have. And, it's like, $500. Okay. Well, this sounds like a good opportunity. And she's telling me, and, maybe I should do it. I'll do it. So I did the workshop. I got a scene to prepare, came to the first day of the workshop. And I realized that the actor teaching the workshop was a background actor from LA. He had never worked even a principal role or an actor role on film and TV.
How do people sleep at night? How?
Right? I know.
Oh my God.
I was so pissed off. I completely severed ties with, and this is what you need to do. You need to make a judgment call and understand that it's up to you to navigate the minefield. And there are going to be people who will try to take advantage of you. There are going to be, classes that are going to lose their benefit for you after a while. Study with a wide variety of teachers. Go, if someone offers to an auditing session in a class, take it because it's free, or it's at a greatly reduced rate where you're just watching what's happening in the class. You will learn a lot just from watching. There are ways to do this, and there's information out there about, suggestions on how to navigate it and stuff like that. And I suggest you go out and you do some research and you find out who are the great teachers in this city. Where is that information that I need to find in my city to be able to navigate this? And hopefully you find some people that can help you, because it is, a bit of a daunting task, and it's very easy to get taken advantage of and to get discouraged. And I think that's the worst thing to happen. To have your heart hurt by this is awful. I ended up getting lucky after that and finding an agent that was great and really informed and helped me kind of get into the place that I needed to be as a young 20-something actor in Vancouver in the 90s. Way back when. I'm so old.
Well, I think it's hard because not only do we get actors who are fresh out of high school and like ripe for being taken advantage of just because they just don't have I wouldn't have had the cognitive wherewithal to know what's a scam and what's not. And you kind of come with a bit of stars in your eyes. But also, again, I think even people who are the second act actors who I sometimes feel like, oh, my BS meter is through the roof. Like, no problem. I 100% have gotten scammed. Because how can we not when we're just learning about the industry, right? Like, it's so tough. And I agree with you. It's so discouraging also because so much of acting is opening up your heart and emotions, where almost every other job is like, no, close it off. So when you're like trying to learn how to do that and then you get scammed and it's like hitting you, that just adds to the discouragement. It hurts. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It hurts. It hurts much, much harder.
It hurts and it's embarrassing. Yeah. Yeah. So I think I've done Artist a couple times.
What was it like? What was the feedback like?
It was great, and in no way, shape, or form is this like an ad or anything. I try and be as non-biased as possible, but like I had a really good experience because again, I haven't done it in a while and I'm excited to do it again. I did it when I was with my former agent, who is a lovely person, but just would never give feedback. So I'm kind of like craving that feedback. Mm-hmm. So this artist was literally you were the first people to give me self-tape feedback.
Cool. Great.
So cool. Right?
Yeah.
So cool. And tangible feedback. And yeah, I coming from a science background, I love getting my score. And I was like, literally that means nothing. But it was just so great to have the comments being like, I like this. And then the people who, critiqued or whatever, me were like, here are things you can work on. Here's some, like you're saying, here are some technical things you can change.
Yeah.
I was like, thank you. Because, I think a lot of times we get the feedback of you're great, good job.
Yeah,
not helpful. Like I can handle it, and I want constructive criticism.
Yeah,
which is exactly what it was. My experience was with Artist. So I thank you for doing what you're doing. It is so valuable and appreciated, and I think hopefully more people will check it out, especially my vintage.
Yeah, the hardest thing is getting the word out, right? Like really it is. And to be able to say, actually, this is not a scam. Like this is, it's not a scam. We're not, like this is legit. And we're trying to, look at all the people, look at the casting directors. There's no way that they would put their name on this. Look at all the panel. Like these are working professional actors in the field. Like they want to help. And we want to help. I want to be helped. I want feedback.
Is there anything that you are looking forward to coming up this year? Besides, obviously, the big, huge showcase that will be already done by the time this airs, but there'll be more coming.
Yeah, well, the big change that's happened with Artist is that we're going cross Canada now instead of just Toronto, Vancouver. So it's going to be everything combined. So we've got casting directors that are going to be represented in every showcase moving forward from Vancouver and from Toronto and from another part of Canada. So this month or September, it's going to be Rhonda Fizeki from Calgary, and she's super lovely. I don't know if you have any connection to her, but she was a teacher. She's done workshops and she loves teaching. And she has been in the industry for like 25 years. Anyway, we've got like a ton of casting directors involved, like Candice Elzinga, who's been around since forever, Jason Knight in Toronto, who has come on. Yeah, who's come on recently. And I've never met Jason. I've only spoken with him on the phone and stuff, but he seems so great. And the feedback that the actors got from the meeting with him after the last Toronto showcase was fantastic. And so Corinne Clark, Sharon Forrest is actually going to do this showcase, the September showcase, which is great in Toronto. So there are, a lot of people kind of involved, and it's always kind of emerging or we're building. And it's great. It's fun to be part of. So we're doing that cross Canada idea. And so the top 10, if you get in the top 10, you get to choose which casting director you want to meet most. So if it's a casting director from your city, awesome. If it's a casting director outside of your city, great. And then I've got some other ideas with artist to artist that I think I'm going to start working on. They're really at their kind of infancy kind of idea right now. So I don't want to really reveal too much or talk about it, but it's kind of, it's going to be an interesting, addition to what we currently do. And other than that, it's me kind of keeping on going on with acting, and auditioning all the just did one yesterday, got another one due on Monday. There's always work to be done in that regard. And, hopefully that work is, exciting and I find a way for it to feed me like it once had. That's kind of my goal right now. And I think I'm getting there. One of the things that I discovered that might help that with someone listening out there is to actually use different readers. Don't get settled into one reader all the time. Because a new reader will always give you a little bit of a kick of life and just newness. And so, that 20%, that 20% new, that 20% chaos can sometimes come from that new reader. So, maybe the idea that I was talking about to artists have something to do with that.
Maybe. Watch this space. Yeah.
Stay tuned for more. Maybe by the time this is broadcast.
There we go. Yeah. Do you have any final words of wisdom? This has been filled with words of wisdom, but any final words of advice or wisdom or stories to share from your time, from your acting life?
Don't forget the beginner mind, enjoy this work. Enjoy the play of it. Remember that it should be fun, and gravitate towards those things and those people that allow you to experience that joy and that fun and that wonder that can come with this, and move slowly and cautiously away from those that don't.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and thank you, Kurt, for being my guest this week. Thank you so much for taking it upon yourself to recognize the lack of interaction we Canadian actors have with casting directors and building a platform for us to be able to do that. Thank you for that. If any of you are interested in taking part in the Artist to Artist Showcase, again, this is not an ad. This is just an incredible platform for people to use that I have used myself and had a great experience with it. The website is below, and they will be having a showcase coming up, I'm told, within the next month or so. I'll make sure to let you know when that opens up. But again, it's the Artist to Artist Showcase, and thank you again, Kurt, for developing this incredible platform and sharing your story with me and with us. I hope you'll all tune in next week for another episode of Second Act Actors. Bye! Second Act Actors is produced and edited by me, Janet McMorty. Theme music by Guillaume, additional sound editing by David Studio, additional video editing by Jackie Wadoer, show notes written by Sarah Hopkinson. I record using Riverside FM. If you're interested in developing an interview-based webcast like mine, I highly recommend this platform. Shoot me an email and I'll direct you to the wonderful folks there. If you or someone you know is interested in being a guest, email me at secondactactors@gmail.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. My love language is words of affirmation, so compliments, constructive criticism, and feedback are always welcome and encouraged. Negative Nancys, Judgy McJudgersons, or Debbie Downers, unless you're Rachel Dratch, regarding me or my guests are not welcome. It takes serious courage to share your story with the world, so if you're tempted to negatively comment about someone else's story, please ask your therapist why you're such a garbage person. Save the drama for the stage. On that happy note, I hope you'll tune in next week for another episode of Second Act Actors. Bye!